The skull is small, that of a child, one of our early ancestors.
Deep beneath the soil of Montana, a child's grave would come to challenge nearly everything we thought we knew about the peopling of the Americas. This discovery was never just about ancient bones. It was about genetic evidence, powerful enough to overturn decades of assumptions. When scientists finally succeeded in decoding the DNA of a 12,900-year-old infant, the results forced historians and geneticists alike to reconsider the entire story of America's first peoples. What emerged was evidence of a single ancestral source, but the implications went far beyond origin alone. They revealed how quickly humans spread across an entire hemisphere, and how one small child came to hold the key to that story. The child who held the key. In 1968, two construction workers were quarrying sandstone at the base of a rocky outcrop in southern Montana. And they were carrying out routine work with no expectation of uncovering anything unusual. That changed when their equipment struck something fragile beneath the surface. Just 6 feet underground lay the remains of a human child. At the time, the find could easily have been overlooked or lost among countless other discoveries. Instead, it became one of the most important archaeological clues ever uncovered in North America. The question it would eventually help answer was one of the largest in human history. Who were the first people to settle the Americas, and where did they come from? The location, now known as the Anzac Site, was immediately recognized as exceptional. The remains belonged to a boy between 1 and 2 years old. Yet it was not only the child's age that drew attention, and he had been buried alongside more than 100 carefully made tools crafted from stone and antler. These were not simple implements. They included finely shaped spear points and specialized tools produced in a distinctive and recognizable style. Archaeologists quickly identified them as Clovis artifacts. At the time, the Clovis culture was widely believed to represent the earliest human presence in North America. The Anzac collection remains the largest single assemblage of Clovis tools ever found. There was another striking element to the burial. Both the child's remains and the artifacts were covered in a thick layer of red ochre, a powdered iron-rich mineral. More than 30 pounds of it had been deliberately placed over the grave. In many ancient societies, red ochre carried deep symbolic meaning, often associated with life, blood, and renewal. This burial was not a simple disposal of the dead. It was a carefully prepared, ceremonial act, suggesting profound care and respect. Nearly 13,000 years ago, someone ensured this child received one of the most elaborate burials known from that era. That act of care would later allow modern science to answer questions those mourners could never have imagined. For decades, the Anzac child remained an important but incomplete piece of the puzzle. The artifacts confirmed that Clovis people were present in Montana around 12,900 years ago. They were skilled hunters, capable of bringing down large Ice Age animals using distinctive fluted spear points. The prevailing Clovis-first model argued that these people represented the first and primary migration into the Americas. Yet significant questions remained unanswered. Where had the Clovis people come from? And how could they have spread from northern North America to the southern tip of South America in such a short span of time? The answers were locked inside the child's bones. For more than 40 years, however, the technology needed to read that genetic information did not exist. The skeleton rested in a museum, silent but potentially transformative. No one yet realized it carried a genetic record capable of reshaping the entire narrative of American prehistory. The shocking truth in the DNA. By the early 2000s, the field of ancient DNA research had advanced dramatically. Scientists were now able to extract and analyze tiny fragments of genetic material from long-deceased organisms. For the first time, it became possible to directly examine the biological history of ancient populations. An international research team, led by Danish geneticist Eske Willerslev, focused their attention on the Anzac child. Sequencing his genome would not simply reveal information about one individual. It would offer insight into the population that founded the Americas. The task was extraordinarily complex. DNA degrades over time, breaking into countless fragments. Ancient samples are also heavily contaminated by microorganisms and modern human handling. As reconstructing an authentic genome from such material is comparable to rebuilding a shredded book from a destroyed library. Using advanced techniques, the team carefully isolated the child's genetic material and reconstructed his genome. When the analysis was complete, the results were decisive. First, the DNA clearly showed ancestry linked to ancient populations of Siberia. This finding firmly supported the long-standing model that the ancestors of Native Americans migrated from Asia across the Bering Land Bridge, which once connected Siberia and Alaska. It also ruled out alternative hypotheses, suggesting a European origin for the first Americans. That confirmation, however, was only the beginning. The researchers then compared the Anzac child's genome with DNA from modern indigenous populations across the Americas. What they discovered fundamentally altered the understanding of American ancestry. The child's DNA was more closely related to all living Native American groups than to any other population in the world. From communities in Canada to Central America and deep into South America, a shared genetic link traced back to this single individual. Estimates suggested that roughly 80% of indigenous people across the Americas descend directly from the same ancestral group as the Anzac child. The remaining populations were still genetically closer to him than to any other ancient group. This meant the Clovis people were not simply an early culture among many. They were direct ancestors of the vast majority of indigenous peoples in the Western Hemisphere. The child's mitochondrial lineage, known as D4H3A, is rare today, but its presence in his genome confirmed it as one of the original founding lineages that spread southward and diversified over time. The Anzac child was not merely part of a vanished culture. He was an ancestor whose genetic legacy extends to millions of people alive today. A single family takes a hemisphere. The genetic evidence revealed a clear pattern. The Americas were not settled by numerous unrelated migrations spread across tens of thousands of years. Instead, a single founding population had entered the continent and expanded rapidly. That population split into two main branches. One branch gave rise to northern groups, including ancestors of modern Athabascan-speaking peoples. The other branch, which included the Anzac child, spread throughout the rest of North America and all of South America. This reframed the Clovis model. Well, the Clovis people were not a static group confined to one region. They were part of a dynamic expansion that reshaped two continents. Genetic data suggests that after arriving in the Americas, this founding population spent several thousand years in Beringia, a landmass now submerged beneath the Bering Sea. During this period, their genetic identity became distinct. When ice sheets began to retreat around 15,000 years ago, pathways opened to the south, allowing rapid migration. The speed of this expansion is remarkable. Archaeological and genetic evidence indicates that within 1,000 to 2,000 years, humans had spread from Alaska to the southern tip of South America, covering more than 10,000 miles. This represents one of the fastest large-scale migrations in human history. This rapid movement also resolved long-standing debates about early archaeological sites. Locations such as Monte Verde in Chile, dated earlier than Clovis sites in North America, were once controversial. The Anzac genome showed that people could have reached South America quickly enough for both timelines to be correct. Variations in skeletal features across the Americas, once cited as evidence of multiple founding populations, were now understood as the result of genetic drift within a single expanding population. The Anzac child's DNA served as a reference point that unified decades of conflicting interpretations. The legacy of Anzac I. While the scientific findings were groundbreaking, they also raised ethical questions. For many indigenous communities, the study of ancestral remains without consent represents a profound violation. The Anzac child was not just a subject of research, he was a relative. Acknowledging this, the research team consulted closely with local tribes before publishing their results. They shared their findings with elders from several nations, explaining that the child was directly related to the people living there today. For the tribes, the conclusions aligned with long-held oral histories describing deep ancestral connections to the land. The scientific evidence supported traditions passed down for generations. Members of the Anzac family, on whose land the remains were found, also played a central role. Together with tribal representatives and researchers, they decided the child should be returned to the earth. In June 2014, it was nearly 46 years after his discovery, the Anzac child was reburied. The ceremony combined scientific acknowledgement with traditional practices. His remains were wrapped, honored with songs, and placed in a protected location to ensure he would not be disturbed again. The event marked a shift in how science and indigenous communities could work together. The Anzac child left behind two lasting legacies. His DNA reshaped our understanding of human migration, and his reburial helped establish a more respectful approach to studying the past. Science answered long-standing questions, but it also learned an important lesson. Understanding history requires not only evidence, but respect for the people to whom that history belongs. The story of the Anzac child shows that science and tradition do not have to stand in opposition, and together they can tell the same story, one that connects the deepest past to the present. If you want more fact-driven documentaries that uncover humanity's deepest past with clarity and respect, subscribe to Rapid Rank.